Waldo Rivera, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is at 5. Well, another day, and we have another special guest with us tonight. He was the longest-serving governor of Texas, and he hopes to be our next president. Rick Perry is here. Welcome to the 5. Governor, I'm going to kick it off a little bit. So in 2016, immigration seems to be a hot topic. Now, you've been very, very strong advocate of a secure border, but also there's some issues about in-state tuition to illegals. Can you define your immigration policy here and now?
Well, secure the border is the main issue. I mean, you can talk all around it, up and down, back and forth, and it's the federal government's responsibility. This is one of the most interesting things for me is that there are some folks out there that criticize Texas for securing the border, and the fact is we did a very good job of sending our Texas Ranger Recons, our Parks and Wildlife wardens that we literally had in the river in their boats, and our Texas National Guard, and we saw a 74% reduction of apprehensions. And I would consider that to be a very, very good job. But the real issue is that's not Texas' responsibility. That is the federal government's responsibility to secure the border. So the next president of the United States just has the will. You put the personnel on the ground. Securing the border is not rocket science. It's just a matter of having the will at the White House to instruct it to have it done. You put the personnel on the ground. You have strategic fencing in the metropolitan areas. And then the aviation assets, and this is really what's missing from my standpoint, is the aviation assets from Tijuana to El Paso to Brownsville, 1,933 miles, and look down 24/7, analyze what's going on. When you see, obviously, activity that's inappropriate or suspicious, you have quick response teams that go, and at that particular point in time, the border with Mexico can be secured.
Can I just follow up with the 11 or up to, I don't know, estimates as high as 30 million, 11 to 30 million illegals? What do you do with them that are here?
Listen, there are a lot of smart people out there that will figure that out, I'll be more than happy to sit down and come up with the ways to deal with them, but until you get the border secure, I think you're wasting your time to have that conversation.
Can I follow just on one part on the sanctuary cities? Because as governor, you kind of had to deal with that, I think, a little bit. You did have to deal with it in Austin. But so as president, how might you deal with that differently? Because that is becoming an issue that is, well, it's not just right for this year, but they're proliferating.
I think sanctuary cities is a federal security issue, and the federal government needs to deal with. This is not one of those that the 10th Amendment comes in and you deal with it state by state. This truly is one where, a state that has sanctuary cities can deal with them, but at the federal level it needs to be dealt with as well. And I would use the purse strings to punish those cities that allow for sanctuary city activities to occur. To the place that is getting federal dollars, is you cut it out and say we're not going to. You're either going to live with the rules and the regulations and the laws of the country, or you're not.
Greg?
Yeah. Debate's coming up, Governor. They've got this setup where it's almost like the Thanksgiving dinner. You got the big table, and then you got the kiddie table. You're right on the cusp of ending up on the kiddie table. Does it matter where you are as long as you have a podium?
Well, I obviously would like to be in the 10.
Yes.
5 times 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be twice as good as the 5.
That's very good.
I did that math.
This is going to change it for him.
Exactly.
Being at this
table. It will if the 5 comes on strong for me. I'm at the big table, so I'm counting on you guys to, kind of give me the bump I need to get there. I think when you really look at this, hopefully the American people are going to look at the most qualified individual to run this country. And this is going to be an election, I say it's a show me, don't tell me election. There are some great quality candidates out there running for the presidency of the United States on the Republican side. Some men and women who have some pretty impressive resumes. But when you look at the full scope of things, when you look at your life's experiences of where you grew up, having worn the uniform of the country, having been the chief executive of the 12th largest economy in the world for the last 14 years, isn't that what you want? That type of a record, that type of experience of running America. I mean, we've had this experience of the last 6.5, almost 7 years of a young, inexperienced United States senator who has, with no resume, and see where we are with that. And I will suggest to you that economically and foreign policy-wise, this country is in some pretty strenuous times right now, and we need that experience of having run something really big and having the results that are unquestionably good.
Yeah, and you're mentioning, you know, your record, very successful as governor of Texas. One of the areas that you were strongly applauded and supported in was your area of Second Amendment and gun rights. We've seen an administration that has been hostile towards the Second Amendment to gun owners. And what would your position be as president? Would you continue the same ardent support for the Second Amendment?
Well, obviously, I happen to think that you know, individuals who've been trained, background checked, should be able to carry their weapons. I'm one of those that do believe that one of the reasons that Texas has the lowest crime rate since 1968, I happen to think is because we passed concealed handgun license law in the state of Texas. And we heard all the arguments, Eric. We heard people saying, oh, if you do that, you're going to have shootouts on the street. And it didn't happen. I mean, what we have is a state, now, that's not all of it. Part of it is criminal justice reform that we've put into place, where we're sending the clear message that people are not going to lose their opportunities to succeed in life because they made a mistake, and we didn't throw them in jail and throw away the keys with offenses that were drug-related and nonviolent in nature, and we've had extraordinary impact by that. It's been in place now for 8 years. We shut down 3 prisons in the last 4 years, and we saved $2 billion. But more importantly, there are a lot of young men and women whose lives are not destroyed. And that sent a message, along with the economic policies that we put into place, that you get to have a good job. African-American graduation rates are #1 in America in Texas, as well as Hispanic. I mean, that's the story that we tell people, is if you want to live free, you want to keep more of what you work for, you want to have a chance to have a real life that's unlimited in its possibilities, these are the policies that work. And all of those, you live in a place that's safe and secure, you get to keep more of what you work for. I mean, isn't that what we want for America? I mean, and that's my message to people, is that the best years of America are in front of us. I believe it with all my heart. We just are a few good policies and a leadership change at the top from the best years America have ever had.
All right, well, look, you're such a good man, and you have such an excellent record, and yet, in some ways, you are defined by that one club where you couldn't name the various agencies in the federal government, those that you wanted to abolish. Is that unfair?
Oh, I don't think so at all. I mean, but this country is about second chances. Whether it's a young person who's made a mistake in their life, and what we've done, and America's always been about second chances. But you know, whether it's fair or not, it is what it is. I hope people will take a look at the record, take a look at these individuals on that stage, and again, there's some great talent there. But who is it that can really put this country back on track? Who is it that's done it?
Right.
I mean, I think that's the real challenge for us as Americans. You know, I'm not interested in being entertained. I'm interested in being led.
Right.
I'm interested in somebody that's got a record of creating jobs, of securing our border, of standing up and laying out cogent concepts about how America needs to be dealing with our allies, and for that matter, our adversaries. And we don't have that today.
Can I follow up on what you're saying right there? Our adversaries, ISIS, in the news all the time, beheadings, drowning people. Would you, as Commander-in-Chief, send American troops to Syria, to Iraq, to fight ISIS?
Well, here's what I would do. I would have a coalition that I would put together with, obviously, the Gulf states, whether it's the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Kuwaitis, the Turks, the Egyptians, the Israelis, and the United States forces. A coalition together. We know that we're not going to be able to defeat ISIS by a few airstrikes. You're going to have boots on the ground. Now, I'll suggest to you that the Jordanians and the Saudis and the Israelis, I think there is this great opportunity to bring some forces that have historically been not necessarily all on the same team in the Middle East to defeat ISIS. They know that this is a cancer on the Middle East. With the right type of human intelligence, the right type of special ops, with boots on the ground, and it's going to require some American boots on the ground. But using those assets that we have, and we can defeat ISIS there.
Bring it around, Dana.
If I could switch to a speech you gave a couple months ago on African Americans and race, and about the success that you want to see for all Americans. So it was a well-received speech by some quarters. Didn't get a ton of attention, but I was curious if you could expand on it a little bit, because You're not the only candidate to go down that road, but it was certainly significant, and I wonder what kind of feedback you've received from those audiences.
Well, the feedback's been good. It's been good from both my friends in the African American community who know me and who have watched me as I was the governor of Texas for those 14 years. You know, Wallace Jefferson was the first African American on the Texas Supreme Court in the history of our state. And this is a state that's had a historic Democrat background back through the years. And no one seemed to be able to find an African American to go on that Supreme Court. But I did. And not only was he the first African American to serve on that court, 2 years later I made him the Chief Justice. This is an individual whose great-grandfather, 2 times removed, great-great-grandfather, was sold on the steps of the McLennan County Courthouse in the 1850s, Geraldo. I mean, this is an extraordinary story. And as a piece of property, yet here in the early part of the 21st century, this young man is walking up the most powerful courthouse steps in Texas as the Chief Justice. That is an extraordinary story about what can happen. Now, in that speech, I talked about the rank racism and the brutal murder of a young man in Waco back after the turn of the 20th century. And I mean, an incredibly ugly story. And we have to face up to that as a people. And we have to understand that Barry Goldwater in 1964 was against the Civil Rights Act, and our party got painted, and rightfully, as being against civil rights. And we have to stand up and say, we were wrong, but here's what we've done. And my state's a great example of it when we talk about African Americans having the highest high school graduation rates in America. Hispanics have the highest high school graduation rates in America. I mean, this is an extraordinary story about how a state has addressed the issue of racial inequality and made it, I will suggest to you, one of the most equal states in the nation. And we need to be talking about that and reaching into those communities and asking them to take a look at our policies today. The freedom that we give you to keep more of what you work for, the freedom to live in a place where your children can graduate from high school. It's the most powerful thing that we can give them.
All right, we are going to come up against a heartbreak in a minute, but Greg, you get one in here?
Yeah, both my parents were Democrats who then voted for Reagan because Reagan was able to sell conservatism.
So were mine.
Yeah, but he was able to sell conservatism to people that had never really thought about it before. Is that possible now to actually reach out and bring new people into the fold without seeming like you're selling out? Do you know what I mean?
No, I think it's very possible. Matter of fact, I don't think the Republican Party has a future unless we're able to sell conservatism as good for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's our story, and I think that's the one that we need to do a really good job of sharing with them economically. Well, we got 50 years of Democrat policies, and they hadn't turned out very well if you're a minority in inner cities. Let's look at what's happening in places like the state of Texas where we've been able to free people, where they get to keep more of what they work for, regulations that allow for a cost of living that they can afford. I mean, those are powerful things that there are some places across this country you can point to and say, you know what, you get to keep more of what you work for. The cost of living is going to be down because of the regulations. And oh, by the way, your child's going to graduate from high school and they can do anything they want, go into college or be ready for the workforce. I mean, it's a powerful, positive story.
Stay right there because